Okay, if you haven't figured it out, I've known John and Stan for years. They're very, very good friends. John, he's okay, but Stan, he's great. His book, The Paranormal Ranger, you got to get that book. And unfortunately, he doesn't have any with him, like from what I understand. Too bad. But John, no book. He doesn't have a book. He needs a book. He's working on it, but he's not going to talk about it. Anyway, John and Stan are good friends. They've been paranormal rangers together for over 20 plus years. And they have a lot of experiences to share with everybody. And I have a feeling you're going to really enjoy it if you've never heard them before. Who's heard them talk before? Oh, okay. Well, it's the same old stuff. I'm just kidding. All right. Yeah, it's going to be great. You're going to enjoy it. So without further ado, let me introduce John Dover, Stanley Milford. There you go. Take it away.
Thank you, Mark.
Okay, welcome everybody. We've got lots of ground to cover. First, a couple of things. We'd ask that you put your phone on silent. That way we don't wake everybody up that's trying to get some sleep in here. And the other thing is we'd ask that you hold any questions. We're going to take up probably the whole time. And get a hold of us afterwards. If we're not sitting out and inebriated from drinking beer, we'll be okay. And we might answer your question. But no, we're going to have some fun here. Like I said, we got lots of stuff to cover, so we're going to get right to it. Okay, first up, of course, we have a disclaimer. Because we worked for the Navajo Nation, and we had to change our name from Navajo Rangers to Paranormal Rangers so that we wouldn't hit any copyrights or trademarks. So these are our opinions and our information, and it does not represent the official Navajo Nation. So these are our Hollywood pictures. This is when they take all the blemishes off your face, smooth everything out, make you look really pretty. And that's what we look like normally. So we're going to start off. We're going to take you on a little tour. This is the Navajo Nation. It's only 27,000 square miles, about the size of the state of West Virginia. And, or how many acres? 37 million acres of land. So a lot of land up there, basically on the bottom there from Flagstaff all the way across to Albuquerque, New Mexico. It'll take you about 4.5 hours to drive all the way across it.
You see out to the east of here is Blanca Peak. That is one of the 4 sacred Navajo mountains to the northeast side. And so, yeah, we have quite a large area. We even have some ranches here in Colorado now, Boyer Ranch and Wolf Springs Ranch. So we do have lands here in Colorado.
Okay, I won't go over all this. I'm pretty sure everybody here can read. But we get to travel around our Navajo Nation. This is at the confluence of the Colorado and the Little Colorado. And that water there, you can see all the way to the bottom. It looks like it's just a couple of feet. That's about 25 feet down. That water is that clear. And this is Lee's Ferry. Of course, I had to go up there and patrol it in the department boat and test the waters for fishing, just to make sure there were still fish in the river. That river, for those of you who are trout fishermen, is world-class trout fishing. They say that hooking into a 10-pound trout is an everyday occurrence. Landing one is not. And we have Shiprock area. And we have slot canyons like Antelope Canyon up here near Page. We ended up working a disaster up there where we had a bunch of tourists down in this deal. And 30 miles away, they had a flash flood. That water came over the ground from 30 miles. Now, where these guys were, it was clear blue sky, not a cloud. The water sucked down into that canyon. It hit them so hard it blew their clothes off. And they still haven't recovered 2 of the bodies. They're still in there somewhere. So pretty bad. We have a huge ponderosa pine forest, and yes, we do have Bigfoot. This is Monument Valley. Stan got to patrol this area as a park police. And there's our badge and our patch. Back in the day, this is what, 1967?
67.
These were a group of Rangers. The Rangers were first formed in 1957 by a guy named Van Hartesveld. And he designed it to be similar to the National Park Service Rangers. This is what we looked at, like, what year was this, about 2004?
About there, yeah.
Yeah, somewhere around there. So the guy to the left of the guy in the white shirt is me. Stan is a little higher up there in the middle. And the guy in the white shirt wanted to be like a police officer, so he wore a white ice cream shirt. They offered me one, and I told them no. I came up being a field ranger, and I don't want to be an automatic target if I go out in the field. We did wildland fire enforcement. We were trained in wildland fire, so we had to get certified every year. The pinnacle of that is a 40-pound pack test, and you have to march with that as fast as you can walk. If you break into a jog or a run, you're disqualified. You have to go do it again. And they want to make sure that you can make it out in a mile and a half ahead of the fire before it comes and toasts you. This is what a wildland fire looks like. That one jumped the road between Ganado and Window Rock. That's what it looks like. That's a color picture of what a fire looks like afterwards. And we actually had police officers driving their vehicles out there just to look around. And we were concerned because that ground is still hot. And there's what they call widowmakers in the ground where the stumps of the trees have completely burned. And if you stick your leg in one, and you'll just go down all the way to your crotch and probably get 2nd and 3rd degree burns. So we were worried about those guys getting flats and having to walk out in that stuff. We do archaeological enforcement. This is one of the trainings. That sergeant that you see there is so ugly we had to cover his face. And this is actually a little canteen that was seized. This is about 700 years old. It's Anasazi, black and white water jug. And that was seized by a guy in Chinle who is trying to sell it for the price of a pack of beer. We get to go to some of the most amazing ruins. This is up in Poncho House. And that piece of ceramic there is anywhere from 700 to 900 years old. It's been laying out in the sun all those years. Archaeologists to this day don't know what they use for the paint. But I guarantee you, you put a Coke can out there and within 6 months, it'll be silver. We did rescue work. We had a rescue mandate. I don't know if you can see in that picture, but there's ropes hanging off the back of the truck where we had to rope in and get the guy out because he thought he could make it through this flash flood. And winter snow operations, check on elderly people up in the mountains. We found out that the elderly people never needed any help. We asked them, do you have enough water? And Grandpa would point out at all the snow and says, yeah, there's plenty. do you have enough food? And they'd pull the curtain aside, and their whole thing was full of dried beans, dried corn. Do you have enough wood? And they had a big wood pile with a tarp covering it. But the 20-year-olds who lived a quarter mile away from the highway couldn't get out that night to get pizza and had SOS printed out on their roof so that they could get food. This is part of Operation Black Flag. We took our ATVs, went all over the backcountry looking at illegal dumps. And what we were looking for is the residue of meth production. So chemicals and drugs and that kind of stuff. During our winter snow lift, can you tell which vehicle's been out working? This ground was so muddy that we couldn't even drive a four-wheel ATV in there. We had to come back at 2:30 in the morning when everything froze up to get in. Natural disasters, flash floods, tornadoes, you name it, we were right there in the middle of it. And our other mandate was archaeological law enforcement. This guy is sitting up here looking out over the countryside because movement stands out really good. And you're looking for movement. We actually had professional looters coming in, like the Shumways, and they would actually camp out. One would sleep, one would dig, and one would stand guard with a rifle. Here's more of Operation Black Flag. That guy with his back turned to you, that's that handsome guy is me. Stands somewhere in there, but we're getting all the trailers ready to go. And we have horseback patrols. I know just enough about horses to get myself hurt. Me and Stan were both firearms instructors, so we got to have fun. These are semi-automatic shotguns, Fab Arms Fast 20s, and 8 rounds as fast as you can pull the trigger. There's Stan with some of his equipment. We were an official, I don't know, how many of you have ever heard of S&S Transport? It stands for Strategic National Supply. And in the case of an anthrax attack on the United States, we would have been the ones to escort the Cipro out to the different hospitals with the idea that they might attempt to hijack it and sell it on the black market. So we had armed escorts escorting the vehicles, taking the medications to the different hospitals, and we would have drills every year doing this.
Folks, we do have some seats, a whole row of open seats up front.
Yeah, we promise we won't bite much. Just so everybody understands, we are law enforcement. We're both retired, and we're used to training police officers. When you train police officers, imagine a group of kindergarten kids wearing guns. So we try to keep things interesting. If you fall asleep, we'll have you drop and give us 25 push-ups, or we might hit you with a tennis ball. So accidents occur. This vehicle hit a cow that was on the road. I did technical accident investigation. I was a Class 3 Arizona technical accident investigator. That's a 18-wheeler that hit one. And we call this guy Godzilla because he's big and green. We were pulling out tow trucks and fire engines and everything else out of the mud. That's the only thing that could get back in there. That's a 6-wheel drive deuce and a half. Of course, we had ATVs. We've got night vision, forward-looking infrared systems. And we did some work. I used to be a NSS member. That's the National Speleo Society. So we climbed with people like Bob Beecher, that was known as Mr. Arizona Caver. These guys are from the NSS, and they're mapping a cave at Paiute Cave is what it's called. That's the entrance, and that's looking up from the bottom. If you look at this guy, we asked him, "Do you know what's down there?" Nothing but fear.
Everything in that cave moved. There were places you'd go down in there and you'd have a rock the length of this tent right here that would be cantilevered, and you could actually move that rock with one hand. So it was pretty spooky. You know, you're crawling through rocks about a foot, you know, between, and you're crawling, you know, so it's pretty.
Yeah, we had a couple of boulders come down as we were in there. And boy, if one of those, I mean, they're small, but they weigh a lot. And when they're flying and they hit you, you're going to get hurt. That's looking back at the entrance. That's about maybe 40 yards or 50 yards wide. And down where we were, it's about 100 yards long. It's about the size of a football field down there. That's Navajo Mountain looking from Lake Powell. That's my favorite picture. That was my patrol boat. I had to turn it in when I left. We worked the Red Bull air race. How many of you seen these guys on TV flying around? This is the first and only time they ever did it over dry land.
Up to that point.
And we were... the Rangers were actually positioned in the front and trained to get the pilots out of the planes if they pancaked. There's some of our equipment. This is Stan's picture, shotgun, carbine, pistol, all the good stuff.
We covered 27,000 square miles, so one of the things was when we're out there in the backcountry, we were our backup. There was no, I mean, in the metropolitan areas, you might have a backup officer that might be minutes away from you. But out there for us, you know, sometimes it was an hour and a half was your backup. So you had to be trained to a higher level and be able to deal with. I was talking to a guy yesterday, we were talking about how as a law enforcement officer, when we were out there, you had to work with people. You were there to help and protect people. So when situations would arise, you would have to be able to de-escalate that situation. Instead of going to your use of deadly force like you see a lot today and stuff, we had to get our way out of that using our noggin. So.
Okay, so now we're going to get into, we just wanted to give you a primer on some of the things we did. So we're going to talk about the paranormal now. So this is the night before the Phoenix Lights. Everybody here has heard or even seen the Phoenix Lights. The night before in my hometown, little place called Loop, Arizona, we had lights show up. And as you can see, we're not too concerned about forest fires here. We'll be lucky if we get a little grass fire. This is one of the neighborhoods there. You don't get to see my house because I don't want everybody showing up in the middle of the night. But what we had were some lights that were following each other around the town. And they would actually, it was like follow the leader. The first one would change color, the next one in line, the next one in line, all the way down. And they kept doing that. They were flying around our community for about 30 to 40 minutes. And everybody in my neighborhood actually got out their lawn chairs, turned out the lights to their house, and sat in their front yards and watched the show. We thought that the next day, all the press in the world was going to be out there, the news stations, everybody else, and the Phoenix Lights happened and nobody ever showed up. But we can say we had the first preview. We don't know. They flew off toward the west. I would like to think they were heading to Las Vegas to go gambling. But yeah, it was an enigma. We don't know. And I even called back then, being a law enforcement officer, you didn't set yourself up to be ridiculed. So I can remember I called county, Coconino County Sheriff's Department. I had their non-emergency number, called the dispatcher and said, hey, you guys got anybody up on the north end of Flagstaff that can verify something in the air for me? And they said, no. And they said, what do you need? I just said, never mind. And I hung up. So back then, these things happened all the time. We just didn't talk about it. So we do have Bigfoot. You want to tell them about this?
Oh, sure. Throughout the years, I did 23 years with the Navajo Rangers commissioned. John did 31 years as a Navajo Ranger, plus as a police officer with Winslow. But throughout those years that we worked for the Navajo Rangers, we would have cases involving what people refer to as Bigfoot. Close to this area, down on the San Juan River, we would get a number of cases, but it would happen anywhere throughout, over by Kaibito and so there was a lot of cases. Here are some thermal images from some of those cases. I believe this one was 21, I believe, right offhand. I believe. One of the larger ones.
Yeah, you can see the ruler there. That's bigger than Shaq.
Yeah. This is hair from one of the Bigfoot cases. We would get different types of evidence, tracks and hair and impressions on the ground, and we would get logs and things moved, and so there was a lot of. We do have some seats up here if you want to. You're welcome to come up. So.
We don't have any audio. Our cases were after the fact, so we were responding to people that heard things or saw things. But we actually stayed out in the field with night vision equipment, forward-looking infrared systems, and actually set up outposts, waiting and looking.
We do actually have some audio recordings from some of those investigations. Yeah, we do.
This is footsteps going up a hillside. That hill, it doesn't really describe it. You would need both your hands and your feet to climb up that slope. And that Bigfoot, where those flags are, just walked up. The distance between each one of those footprints from heel to heel is 5 foot. If I did a 5 foot stride, I would have to do the splits. And I'll tell you the truth, I can't do the splits. So to go up that type of slope and walk up there, and we have tracked Bigfoot for literally miles. And the tracks disappear in trackable ground. So it's almost like it just got pulled up in the air. We backtrack the other direction. The tracks appear in trackable ground with no foot tracks leading up to it. And so very interesting. We found that over the years, there was a correlation between Bigfoot sightings and UFO sightings. That was definite. Anytime we had increase in one, we had an increase in the other. It's our opinion that Bigfoot is not a terrestrial creature that lives here. We spent so much time in the field, and Kerry will tell you that when he asked me to speak with Stan, I said, we need a hotel room. We had spent our whole career camping. We were set up to do 3 days in the field with no resupply. And when you camp that much and you wake up in the morning and there's 10 inches of snow on your sleeping bag, or you wake up out in the desert with a rattlesnake coiled up next to you, you learn pretty quick that camping isn't all it's cracked up to be.
That photo that we've seen before was on an incline that was about 45 degrees or more at places. So you would have had to have ropes if it was just one of us to traverse up that. But whatever this was, went up it like nothing. So
Here's Stan's investigation of a Bigfoot that crossed a major highway and was reported by I believe it was a nurse working for Indian Health Service.
you can see the heel mark here, and then you can see the toe impressions up on that part of it. And then you see the tracks that went up through that area.
And this is the string of the footprints. But notice all the Navajo police that showed up. Every time we went out on a case, all the looky-loos would show up, the police would show up and want to know, hey, what's going on? What's out here? They'd seen a lot of these too, but they never talked about it. There's some plaster casts of some footprints.
This particular picture here shows this large rock in the center. And that particular rock was part of a case where me and some investigators, when we went out with the family at nighttime, they would have Bigfoot activity year-round. And so we went out with them. They were going to show us the activity, and we went out and we did. That was the first time I ever visually seen one of these things that people refer to as a Bigfoot. What I seen was typical, something that was 8 to 10 foot tall, very robust, built, shoulders probably 3.5 feet wide, and covered in hair. Using both night vision and thermal, we were able to watch this thing watching us. And but the next day we went out, me and one of the other investigators. Can I get some more volume with my mic? I think it's kind of down too low. But testing, you hear fine? Okay, great, wonderful. So we went out the next day and we parked and we walked down the road maybe 1.5 miles. And as we were going back up, this is a high incline area, high mountain area. And we started getting these rocks coming through the trees, these ponderosa pines from down below that was 500 feet down below. And these things, you could hear them like a cannonball coming through those ponderosa pines, breaking the branches. And this one was probably a good 20 plus 25 pounds. And they would hit, all of them would hit within about 10 feet of us. And I think there was 15 of those particular rocks, but this was one of them.
Stan wanted to bring all of them home. And we told him, no, just a representative sample of a small one.
I do still have those rocks.
How many of you have seen this guy before?
Oh, yeah.
That's Dwayne Ollinger from Blind Frog Ranch. He contacted us. He's got a ranch up in New Mexico. And he says, I've got some Bigfoot tracks. What should I do? I want you to come and investigate them. So we told him, get a bin, plastic bin, turn it upside down, put it over the track, put rocks on top of it and protect it because it's going to take us 2 or 3 weeks to get up there. So he says, okay. We get up there. This is the land. They had a wildfire go through this area, so there's a lot of ash. And this is the little stream that it was in. And the way they protected it was they put plywood on top of it. That was it. So now with the snow and the rains, all that ash washed down and it covered up the tracks. So being, you're sitting there going, think fast, rabbit. And we decided, okay, let's make like archaeologists. So we took brushes and little air bulbs and we started working. and brushing the ground. We didn't get the full detail that we would have got if the track had been preserved, but we were able to uncover enough of that track that you could plainly see it. And Stan was working on the other side, and the track that he had right there, you could see the ground is cracked under it. So when that thing stepped across that stream, it had such weight that it cracked the ground around there. And we were able to recover both of those tracks. So we got this title Missing Time, and we'll get into some of that. But a lot of people, and I'm going to head everything off at the pass. I get asked, what is the strangest thing that happened to you? The strangest thing that ever happened to me, every month I would have to travel to Tuba City. So traveling north from Loop to Kaikosmavie is 47 miles. And then it's another 58 miles to Tuba City. And you get up before daybreak because you want to get to Tuba City just before 8 o'clock in the morning so you can get your oil change. If you wait, everybody else lines up in front of you, and you might get out of there at 1 or 2 in the afternoon.
If you're lucky.
So I've got this figured out, right? I go to Tuba City, get there a half hour early. I go through the drive-through at the local fast food restaurant, drive across the street, sit and wait for about 10 minutes while I'm eating my food and having my coffee. And the gates open up and I'm the first one in line. Well, on that particular day, as I was driving, and this is a daylight shot of that area, up near a place called Denebito Wash, the sun is what they call pre-dawn. So the sun is still down below the horizon, but the horizon is getting light. And I looked in front of me and I see nothing but straight road. I looked in the rearview mirror, nothing but straight road behind me. I blinked. And when I opened my eyes, I was coming to a sharp turn. That turn was at Coal Mine Mesa, another 15 or 16 miles up the road. Now that road winds back and forth, it goes up and down, and there's cliffs on one side with no guardrails. And at first I thought, did I just zone out? You know, because we all do that, right? You're driving and, you know, oh, I'm already here. No, I didn't zone out. I blinked. And so I get to Tuba City and go to the fast food restaurant, get my food, drive across the street. I was 45 minutes early. I cannot account for how I gained that amount of time. I would have, if you do the, you know, when you're in grade school, they teach you time distance equations, you know, if Johnny's traveling this many miles an hour, this distance, you know. So I did that, and I would have had to have been going about 150 miles an hour to get there at that time. And you don't drive that fast through Hopi, because Hopi PD will cite you even if you're driving a law enforcement vehicle. So you don't speed, and you don't go under the speed limit. They'll cite you for going too slow.
The thing you have to keep in mind is that John did this work for 31 years. So that becomes a regular routine, getting your patrol unit serviced on the time, regular time. And so he knows the time.
Yeah, I did that every month. That's how many miles. I was putting 5,500 miles on my vehicle every month. So a lot of driving. I've had people tell me, well, obviously you were abducted and they put you down in the wrong time. I'm going to remain skeptical and say, I don't think so. And then somebody even came up and told me, obviously you went through the event horizon of a microscopic black hole. And I'm thinking, yeah, I don't think so. I don't have an explanation for it. It's just something that weird that happened. But afterwards, I was having cases of missing time. I was actually going down the road, and if you can imagine, you're working a 17-hour day. You're on your way home. You're 5 miles away. You know this land, and you know you're 5 miles away from home. You pass a landmark. It's in the middle of the night or 2 in the morning, and you drive for another half hour. And then you pass that same landmark again. Now I'm getting pissed off because I want to go home. I want to get in bed and go to sleep, And it just didn't happen. And that happened to me enough times that, and I was seeing UFOs all the time. Saw everything, saw cigars, saw discs, all kinds of craft, orbs, triangles, squares, pill-shaped ones. And finally I says, I'm getting tired of this. So I got me a dash cam. And after I got a dash cam and started running that every day, I never saw another UFO to this day. And I'm okay with that. Although I know some people would cut their right arm off to go see a UFO in person. I really don't care. Me and Stan have seen them together. And so as a result of that, I got me a new camera just this last year, and it now records in 4K. So, and I've got one in the back, so I can get it from the backside too.
This particular case involved an elderly Navajo man that had retired within the railroad industry. His family had gone down to Phoenix, Arizona. One of the kids was in college down there, and so his wife and his children and grandkids were all down in Phoenix. He was at home late at night. He sees this light coming up toward the house, and he assumes that somebody's driving up to his house. That particular area had hit by a wildland fire, like John had mentioned earlier, and it had just devastated that area. So all of the forest around there was like skeletons. So he sees this light coming up. He thinks somebody's driving to his home, and he ends up going out on the little concrete porch there, and he witnesses an object that's 25 feet in diameter that comes in and encircles his home. And he says it's silent. It didn't have no engine noise or anything. And he said as this thing went around, it was shooting these beams of light, different colored beams of light down to the ground. And it finally went up and it settled at the high point in and around his home. And it was just hovering there. Pretty soon, these lights down on the ground formed, and these lights began working their way toward his house. And when he watched this, one of his little dogs, little mutt, runs out to whatever these lights were, and the little dog ended up yelping as it made contact with whatever this was. When this happened and he heard that little dog get injured or hurt, he went back in the house because he had an uneasy feeling and locked the door, and he just watched from the curtains. And a little bit later, he ends up witnessing these little 3.5, 4 foot tall beings come in around his home. And I'll let John talk about that.
You notice that everybody's face is covered. We guaranteed anonymity in our investigations. The Navajo people don't want people coming out holding hands and singing Kumbaya in their front yard. So they said, we don't want to be identified. This old man was actually offered a whole bunch of money by a UFO TV production. And he told them, no, I'm not interested in the money. I'm not interested in being on TV. They told us when we relayed that information to them, and they said, oh, we saw the report when it first came up that you guys submitted to MUFON because we were asking for MUFON's assistance. And they said, so we're going to go contact him anyway, which I think was really low. So we told them, yeah, go ahead, by all means. We didn't tell them that when we submitted the report, we put the location 100 miles away from where it actually occurred. And so we can imagine these guys beating the bush out there 100 miles away, trying to figure out where this old man lived. The two guys on the side, the tall guys, those are Bigelow Aerospace Research investigators hired by Bob Bigelow. They're actually ex-Special Forces people. And they worked a couple of cases with us out there. So remember, we guarantee anonymity, so we're not going to show their faces. Likewise, we're not going to show you the inside of the house, so nobody can identify it. There's the orb that Stan was alluding to. These lights are going to come in and play a role in this whole situation. And this is, Stan is an artist. So this is Stan's rendering of what the guy saw. He said they were wearing skin-tight white or light gray outfits. And that when they would go up to these lights, they would dim out. And then when they'd back up, the light would come back on. And these are typical solar lights that you get at Walmart or Target. They were fascinated with these lights. And you can see they actually lead to the outhouse. They actually went in and looked inside the outhouse. There's me and one of the other rangers that reported it. We had EPA come out with radiation detection equipment. And one of the girls, when we got there, this pup is a blue heeler pup, and it was jumping all over us with muddy paws. When you're in uniform, you don't like dogs jumping on you because you're trying to stay clean. And one of these girls wearing these Tyvek suits was a puppy lover, and she went up there and here puppy, come here. It looked at her white suit and ran to the house and curled up in a ball right next to the front door and wouldn't come back. We had a Navajo English federal court interpreter working with us that did simultaneous translation. That dog there was a Rottweiler. She had pups. She was ready to break that chain when we were there. On that night, that dog went in the doghouse and never came out and never made a peep. Here's the dog in question that yelped. We guaranteed its identity too. Unfortunately, within 2 weeks after this case where we investigated it, that pup died. We think that whatever it got zapped with was a leading cause, but the family didn't tell us. Otherwise, we would have had a necropsy done to see what the actual cause of death was. We found these unusual marks. Almost looked like a coffee can was pressed into the ground. But the marks went in a straight line all the way up. We don't know what they were. There's Bigelow's investigators. You guys all heard of the ATIP program, right? And aerial threat identification, and how they got Congress allocated something like $22 or $24 million. A lot of that went to Bigelow for his investigations.
One of the things with that particular case was that this elderly man had a sister that lived less than a mile away from him. And she had a dog that had these little roly-poly type little pups. There was 8 of those little pups that were there. And as you know, they're rolling around and running all over the place and tripping over themselves. And in this particular case, the night of this particular event, the next morning, all of those little pups were gone. And there was no sign of predatory kill or anything like that. They just mysteriously disappeared the night of that event.
So here's a subject we're asked about all the time. We were the first to actually speak about skinwalkers. And we used to tell people if there's any Navajos in here, now's the time to take a coffee break for about 10 minutes. Just as a public service announcement. Because this subject, I can tell you right now, if you know any Navajos, do not ask them, tell me about skinwalkers, because they'll shut you down and they'll think you're a really bad person. Because when you talk about these things, they will seek you out and they will attack you psychically. And they know when we're talking about them. So we go through our prayers and our smudging and everything else to protect ourselves. Stan, when we first got here, was actually receiving an attack and had to go take some medicine for it and say his prayers. And after he got done, he was fine. So these things, if you can imagine somebody coming up to you and sticking a knife in the back of your head and just twisting it around, or in your back, same way. That's what it appears. So we have Tony Hillerman talking about skinwalkers, and everybody's seen the Dark Winds series and all that. Stan and the Chief Ranger actually got to sit down with Tony Hillerman and explain to him that Jim Chi should have never been a police officer, because in our knowledge, police officers do not handle skinwalker cases. They don't handle anything archaeological, but Rangers do. So we were actually tasked with investigating these type of cases. The Hollywood version is the Wolfman, of course. You get these depictions that are very horrifying. Farron Zeta type artwork that depicts them. So they're looking, all muscular and crazy and everything else. The reality is much different. This was found along a power line. And if you Google the word skinwalker, this is one of the pictures you'll see. Skinwalker Ranch used this picture and has it on a big poster on the wall. So you'll see it in the background when these guys are talking. Before, they used to show it close up and say, this is a skinwalker. And I actually had to go in there and tell them, you're being very disrespectful. This is a Yebiche dancer. The Yebiche were holy people that came to the Navajo to impart knowledge. And this knowledge took the form of, you don't kill. You live with your neighbors peacefully. You don't steal. You don't do a lot of things, and they're teaching moral values. Usually in a ceremony, during the wintertime, you'll see 10 or 12 of these dancers. The last one in the line is the clown. The clown does everything opposite. He makes fun of everything. He chases the girls around. He doesn't listen. If they tell him to do something, he'll do the opposite. The clown represents the five-fingered people. That's you and me. So we don't take instructions from holy people. We go on our own little jaunt and decide we know better.
That particular ceremony, if you're interested, during the Shiprock Fair that'll be coming up before too long, once it starts getting cold, they do have a public viewing of that, and it's very interesting. I've been a couple of times to that particular fair and witnessed that, and it's really interesting. It happens at night. It's very, very magical to watch this.
So since a lot of different places are showing this on TV as a skinwalker, I said, okay, I'm going to show you what it feels like. So we tell people that depending on your religious background, this could be Satan incarnate. And these are his demons. Notice they're all wearing red. So, and then I told them, it's the same thing. You're doing this and telling people this is evil. We could say this is evil. And depending on if you have a Baptist background, that could be true, depending on what religious background you have. This is also included in those pictures, showing a man sitting there. This is not a skinwalker. This is a healing ceremony. And they're trying to heal this man sitting on the sand painting. That sand painting will be destroyed after he's done. Skinwalkers can appear as animals, mostly as coyotes, as wolves. I have one recently that was seen as a half man, half kangaroo. They can take any hide that they have, any animal remains, and we think they use the DNA, and they can change into that animal, even birds, even owls, crows, ravens. That's a crow right there. So they can change into whatever they want. If they get some of your DNA, they can change into somebody that looks just like you. So Navajo kids at a very young age are taught you don't leave sweaty clothes laying around. You don't defecate outside without covering it up. You don't leave your fingernail clippings or your hair anywhere that it can be got at, because a skinwalker can take that and change into something that looks like you. So you're taught at a young age to do this. So it's actually pretty frightening.
One thing to keep in mind is here in the United States, there are 574 recognized Native American tribes. And in Canada, you have 600 plus First Nations people. In Mexico, you have 68 indigenous recognized cultures. And most of those particular cultures have versions of this. And not only those indigenous peoples, if you travel around the globe, there are versions of these shape-shifting entities. And it goes back in history, even the werewolf kind of lycanthropy thing goes back, I think, to the Greek culture, thousands of years. So something interesting to keep in mind. It's not just Navajo. There are other tribes. You have the Wendigo and other versions of this.
Hold the questions. We'll get with you after. We've got hogans out there. This is a female hogan. A male hogan looks more like a teepee. They're covered in mud. And the female hogans, the doors always face to the east. This is so that when you rise up in the morning, you come out as the sun is coming up and you greet the morning sun and say your prayers and offer your corn pollen. We have found places from the 1920s where hogans were built with the doorway facing to the west. This is where witchcraft was being taught. And I'm saying Navajo witchcraft. I'm not referring to Wiccans, so don't get upset.
A black witchcraft.
So in this case, the orb case is what we call it. We had a young lady coming home from Flagstaff, Arizona. She lived in where I live, in Loop. And as she's driving back, up between these little hills on the left side, there she sees a red light. This is at about 1 a.m. And she's watching it thinking, what is a helicopter doing hovering up there in the middle of the night? As she drives down, this thing starts coming down that hill and it's paralleling her course as she's driving. She comes to a bend in the road right at the reservation line. And she has to take her eyes off this thing. She said at this point, it's about the size of a beach ball and it's red. She can tell it's 3-dimensional. And it's lighting up the ground about 6 feet below it. This is looking back from the reservation line toward Flagstaff. As she's driving down the road, this red orb changed into a white orb. And It's now a little smaller than a volleyball, but bigger than a softball, is how she described it. And as she's driving, she's watching it and she's trying to take a picture of it, but it won't show up in the viewfinder of her phone. But she puts the phone out the front, she can see everything in the viewfinder. As she's driving for about a mile, this thing speeds up and takes off, makes a right angle turn and shoots across the sky looking like a shooting star. This was included in the episode on the Netflix Unsolved Mysteries. And so they did a reenactment of this. What they don't show you and what we're going to tell you about is that when she got home and she pulled her vehicle in, she was faced with a 4-foot rabbit sitting where she usually parks. She said it was sitting upright. Look, you know how a cat sits? She says that's how it was sitting. But the ears on the side were both plastered together and straight back at an angle. Very unusual. She said it was a pepper color, brown and black, but peppered all the way through. And she said that as soon as she pulled in, she stopped. And she said, "Oh, I'm onto you, rabbit." She called her brother, who was in Phoenix, and said, "I'm going to make a run for the door. Stay with me, because if I disappear, you need to call somebody." She opened her door and got out, walked backwards around the car and ran for the door. She went inside. That next morning, she had a migraine headache, and she has never in her life had a migraine. We contacted STAR team members, our friend Chuck Modlin, who was with the MUFON STAR team at the time. And he used to work at Lawrence Livermore Labs in Sandia. He told us take a compass and walk around the car. So we walked around the car, and on the back pillar there, we got a really strong magnetic reading. From 3 feet away, holding a compass, that needle pinned right there. If you move this way, that needle would stay on that one spot. We went around the other side of the car, and up in front of the passenger door, there's another magnetic area. If you drew a string between those 2 points, it goes right through the driver. So that orb was actually scanning the vehicle. They asked us to pull the oil filter and send it in for analysis. It came back, that biggest spike there is sodium nitrite. Sodium nitrite is basically hot dog water. It is not a normal byproduct of oil, nor is it a byproduct of an oil filter. So they don't know why that's in there, but there was a high level of it. This is where that thing was sitting in front of that car, and you can see the ground is disturbed. So what we did is we went back and shot it at night with some high contrast, and you could see that ground is broken up. That ground is so hard that if you took a boot to it and kicked it over and over and over, you would finally break the surface. It's caliche clay, 4 inches of caliche clay, hard baked on top of limestone. A week later, she had another orb coming from the other side. This one is about as big as a cab over tractor trailer.
This is a case that we call the mother-daughter case. So there was a woman and her daughter that had gone to Gallup to go shopping, and they were coming back really late. And so as they're coming back, you can kind of see the open highways of this particular area. And as they were getting closer to home, in this depiction, you see the arrow with the yellow. That's where the mother first notices an object that's out where the blue arrow is. And what she notices is a string of white lights. And as she gets closer, She notices that the string of lights is over 100 yards long. She gets the daughter's attention that's sitting in the passenger seat, which the daughter is college-age girl. And just as the daughter looks, all of a sudden it rises up over 3 stories high, and it's still over 100 yards long. And they're watching this. The mom wants to drive out to where this object is on the range. And the daughter says, no. She says, I had a dream about this the other night. Don't go out there. So they just watch from the highway. Soon after this, it ends up making a sonic boom. And then there was a bright flash. And then there was this black dome where this object had been. And then it vanished. And so they continue on home. And they live in a little residence out there. The winds end up hitting that community area, blowing down fences. And for them, this was an almost biblical kind of event that they experienced. And the husband was also in law enforcement. And he was in training down in Phoenix. And he was getting ready to leave training and come home, and they said, we're all right. Things have calmed down. So eventually, he contacted me and asked me, do you still do these investigations? I said, it depends, and I explained. And so I ended up investigating this particular case. It was really interesting, but it really, really traumatized these 2 ladies, and very interesting.
This one, we jokingly refer to it as the Satan butt case. We had our title page all set up, and we went to a venue, and they said, oh, all we have is a Macintosh computer. Well, as you know, the Windows computer doesn't actually work well with a Macintosh. And in that case, it cut off the E on Butte. And it came up as the Satan butt case. So we refer to it as the butt case now. That is Satan Butte. It's near, and this was featured in an episode of Beyond Skinwalker Ranch. Again, Bigelow's investigators came out. We had a guy that was seeing lights. His name was Haas Lore. And Haas was seeing these lights out in the distance. And he ran in and told his wife, who's Navajo at the time, hey, I'm seeing these lights. And, wives, what do you tell your husband when they come in like that? Yeah, right. So he decides he's going to get a good camera. And he got a good camera. And he took these series of pictures, which he sent into MUFON. And that's the object that he was seeing. And that's what happens when you got a shaky hand and you got a time exposure. But he's seeing these lights, and he said they got treadles of light coming down to the ground, almost like Christmas lights. And these objects are flying into the mesa, not around it, not over it. They're going straight into the mesa. Okay. I see people running outside, so I'm sure they're going to gas it up again. I think we're back on. So he goes outside. And he sees what he says is an upright torpedo on the other side of the corral. So guys, what do? You poke it with a stick, you throw a rock at it, that's just a guy thing. And he whips up his pellet gun and boom, shoots at it. And he hears the pellet go ping. And as soon as it hit that thing zipped off and ended up about a half mile away in front of somebody else's house. So he called us, or called MUFON, and MUFON called us and asked us if we'd go out and meet with the guy, and we did. During that time, he was also having skinwalkers show up. He had one show up at his house, and he's got a book about this. The skinwalker showed up as a mangy dog that was ready to fall over from starvation. And so again, guy thing, he took a 2x4, went out there and hit it as hard as he could in the head. And in his driveway, it fell over and all its urine came out, which is a pretty good indication that you killed it. So, and he ran inside and tells the wife, and the wife said, "Show me." So he says, "It's right out here in the driveway." And they went outside and the dog was gone. He said when he hit it, a whole bunch of dust came up. After that, he got sick and sicker and sicker. And he told us that he was vomiting out one side and diarrhea out the other, laying in a pool of sweat. And the doctors at the hospital couldn't determine what was wrong with him. So after he became incapacitated, his wife, he was married then, he's no longer married, but she and a neighbor picked him up and carried him out to the truck, and they drove almost 100 miles to see a medicine man. The medicine man told them that if you had been another 2 hours, he would have died, and gave him some tea to drink and some other stuff. It made him vomit. With the very next day, he was back almost to normal. And the little boy went with them. And the little boy wouldn't come into the hogan to do the ceremony. And later on, they asked him, "How come you didn't come in?" And the little boy actually told them that, "I didn't want to come in because of that scary dark figure standing behind the medicine man. I was not going to go past that thing." And nobody else saw that.
Theories of the paranormal. So one of the cases that I investigated involved a haunting case of this office space. One of the unique things in that particular case, the phenomenon, was coins would import out of thin air. They would just fall simply out of thin air into the floor. So in 2 days, there was a total of 66 coins. And for me, I witnessed at least 10 of those coins, materialize or come flying across the room. In that, it really opened my eyes to all of the paranormal stuff that John and I were investigating. And it made him and I realize that this element of other dimensions, or what you hear with string theory and that kind of thing, there's something to that. The coins had to materialize from some other starting point, coming into our physical world and then landing in the floor. That 2 days, the 66 coins, all they would hit and behave like a regular coin on the concrete. They'll hit and come in and spin and fall over. 66 coins all landed heads up. And and I know out of our schooling that from statistic and probability, that's not going to happen. And so really it made John and I, it really cemented this idea. We had Bigfoot cases. Well, we could see that the Bigfoot, there was no evidence of this thing living in the woods like a mountain lion, like a bear, like a coyote, like every other wildlife that's out there. There just wasn't that evidence of it. Yes, you'd have tracks, you'd have hair, and these kind of evidence, but we lived out there and we didn't see that with these things. So we gathered that these things are coming into our physical world from some other plane. And then with the Navajo culture and the talk about the creation story or the emergence story, you have these different worlds that the Navajos end up coming into our physical world. So that really played a huge role, that particular case, for me in seeing the big picture with a lot of this paranormal stuff.
We started coming up with this theory or this idea actually back in 2006. And there were less than a handful of people talking about string theory and dimensions back then. Now you get on the TV, everybody talks about it. but back then it was a pretty new subject. So if you look at our universe as billions and billions of stars, Mark would tell you it's vast. It's just so totally, we've got craft up there looking at it. And let's see, where are we? Okay, so we're going to keep on going here because we're going to be running out of time pretty soon. This is our public service announcement. Do not let your kids play with one of these. This is a talking board. This is a Ouija board. Every Navajo kid that we've ever talked to has told us, number one, it lies. Number two, it ruined their lives. Every one of them. We haven't had anybody come to us saying, oh, I'm singing its praises. It's wonderful. We were told by people that worked with these kind of things that this is an unfiltered portal. There's no guarantee what could come out of it. Now, knowing that, look who they're advertising to. Little girls can buy this. You can go to a major retail store and there's displays set up that attract children. I grew up in a Christian home. I'm a born-again believer. And we had a missionary say that his kids were playing with one of these. And he went up to it and asked it, do you believe Jesus Christ is the Son of the living God? And he says this thing levitated, started spinning around, and flew out the window of the house. So, there is something to this. So we just tell people don't mess with it. And there are rules to using one of these. One of the things you have to do after you get done is you have to close it. And very few people understand or know that.
It can leave a portal open inside your home, and things can come and go from that.
We ran into something we call shadow phenomenon. We're going down the road and we see a shadow go across the road. And so me and Stan are looking, at the sky all around us. This is on the Beeline Highway, State Route 87, going from Payson to Phoenix. We're not speeding. Cops on their off-duty time, we don't speed. We're always obeying the traffic laws, right? So we're looking around, where is that? Who's pacing us? And we don't see anything. We started talking to people about this, and they said, yeah, I was mowing my lawn and a shadow went over me. I looked up, there's nothing in the sky. Streetlight interference. We go down, you've got this. I know this happened to everybody here. You drive down the street, you go under a street light and the light goes out. Stan has been going down how many lights? 31 lights in a row, all went out. And I can tell you at the time, his headlights were so, what do they call that? Oxidized, that it looked like 3 candle power headlights. I mean, they were just yellow and dim. So it wasn't his bright lights. We cleaned his headlamps later on. He was setting brush fires. But, and then I've had at least, 15 of them in a row go out.
We've had those lamps. We'd be, let's say, in Vegas in a parking garage and have the lights above us actually explode.
Stan did a case, a haunting case in the hospital at Fort Defiance, where he was actually born. And they spread talcum powder on the floor, and they went to collect the ball afterwards, and the ball had rolled out and went around the corner and rolled up the stairs and into an office and ended up in a wastebasket.
There was little tracks. There was only 2 of us investigators in there on that particular investigation. And after we went in, And then we came back out. There was little moccasin footprints that followed us throughout the hospital. So it's pretty
And the
interesting.
building was locked with chains on the
It was
door.
locked up.
They were actually locked in.
That was during one of the investigations. One of the techniques in the investigations like that, you'll go through and initially you'll take photographs of the entire facility. And this one, as we came back to it, there was an image of an individual that was in there, but that wasn't one of the investigators.
We've worked with a lot of special ops people, Navy SEALs, Delta Force, U.S. Secret Service, President Security, training in firearms.
Gunsight Institute, Paulden, Arizona.
So when you work with these guys, you start to recognize them. They have a very distinct look and appearance about them. And Stan is having breakfast and sees these two guys. This is right after our Satan Butte investigation. And these two guys showed up. They're paying no attention to the TV on the wall. They're both on their cell phones. So we got their license number and ran it. Being the curious folks that we are. They also had a marquee up, on the hotel that said, "Welcome NASA scientists." There is no NASA scientific collaboration taking place in Window Rock, Arizona.
So your men in black don't always wear black.
This is the building that Stan worked at, where that chair rolled across that stage there by itself about 15 feet. There's some of the coins that appeared. That one is a Taiwanese 2 UN coin. We were hoping that was going to portend that we were going to end up in Taiwan speaking, but it hasn't happened yet. Stan, this thing, you talk about hitchhiker, this thing followed Stan home, and it shows up every now and then. So that's a coin. That's one that fell behind the dresser where he was staying.
Those things can happen anywhere. Happened in Scotland, happened in Canada, anywhere.
We were down at Phoenix, and one of our friends, Jim Mann, who used to be the assistant director for Move On for Arizona, he was panicked and he came up to us and he says that he had just finished a talk about Rendlesham Forest with Colonel Halt. And while he was standing there, him and another guy were on different rows talking, and something hit him in the leg. Well, he wears cowboy boots, right? So it hit him in the side of the cowboy boot. And he looked down and there's a coin. But there's nobody around in the whole room that could have thrown it at him. So he just picked it up, stuck it in his pocket. They go on talking. Pretty soon another one hits him in the leg. Looked all around, still nothing, picked up the coin, stuck it in his pocket. Later on, he looked at the coins, and they're both 1 pound English coins. Rendlesham Forest, do we see a connection here? So that's the backside of them. And he was so freaked out, and he says, "What do I do? What do I do?" And we told him, get a little picture frame, put them in there, put it up on your mantle, and you got something to talk about. This girl was taking pictures in Lukachukai, and we call this the flying onion. This one was a game camera that was set up, and you can see at night, it picked up this row of lights. And if you look at it, you can tell where those lights are. So we talk about positive and negative energy. A lot of people say good and evil. We still doing okay on time? Yeah, we've got about 10 minutes. So we refer to it in Navajo culture as positive and negative energy. We talk about Hojo, the concept of Navajo philosophy of health. Hojo is talking about harmony in a nutshell. It's maintaining a balance in your life. It accepts that there's good and there's bad. And it's up to you to have a social responsibility of which side of that coin you're going to end up on. Just like the force and the dark side, right? So there would be no Luke Skywalker without the dark side. We have an oral history in our tribe, in many tribes all across the United States. They have an oral history. We are called savages in the Constitution of the United States, and it's still listed there. The word savage indicates somebody who does not have a written language. Yet there are many tribes that had a written language, but we were called savages for the sole purpose of denigrating a race of people so that they could be exterminated. And I'm a survivor. My family was at Sand Creek. My ancestor there was Chief White Antelope. So, we know all about that. We have what is called generational trauma. Yet we survived. And so, we're advancing.
Here we are today.
Yeah, here we are today. So Navajo culture accepts that there is a paranormal. And one of the things that we talk about is everybody is waiting for the government to say, okay, we're going to have disclosure. Yeah, the lights in the sky, those are UFOs. They're not going to say that. They're going to study it because they want to weaponize it. And they're not going to come out and say anything. Native Americans all across the United States, Canada, and South America already know that they're real. They don't need a government. We don't trust the government anyway. 6,000 treaties have taught us not to trust the government because not one of them was ever upheld. So, but we know. So we won't get into all this because that's going to take up a lot of time. But we have a high test for evidence. We are always looking for something concrete. We actually had people tell us, oh, Bigfoot is a spiritual thing and he doesn't leave footprints. And we just basically says, oh, that's BS. We've seen footprints. We've tracked them. We've seen hair left in the barbed wire. So, we know that they're physical here. So don't tell us they're just these spirits that are drifting around us. So personal experiences.
John and I were assisting National Park Service and Navajo Police in finding an individual that had drowned up on the San Juan River. The San Juan River is the northern boundary of the Navajo Reservation. And so John and I put John's boat in the water and from Lake Powell and went up looking for this individual. We get up probably about 70, 80 miles up on the San Juan River from where we were at. And we didn't find this individual. We decided to camp out that night. As we pulled the boat on shore, set up our camp and our cots, ate our MREs, and we were facing south to the river, and it had got dark. And I got John's attention, and I said, there was this object coming across the sky that was zigzagging, like this really sharp zigzag. It got about the 12 noon position above us, and I'd gotten John's attention, and he was looking at this. John is a buff of anything military, aircraft, everything. And so he's seen the afterburners on two F-16s following this object. And so he pointed that out. All of a sudden, this object that was right here above us went all the way. You look out on our horizon here, and you look at how far out you can see. It went from here, zigzagging, all the way to the edge of the horizon in less than a second and a half. And it left the F-16 still right above us, trailing, like a little kid on a tricycle. This thing was gone. It would have had to have been going well over 10,000 miles an hour. So I
was on our way back from an investigation at 2 a.m. driving between Indian Wells and Delcon, and I had a green orb following my vehicle down the road. I thought at first, I'm armed, I can turn around and see what this thing is. And then I thought, maybe that's not the right thing to do. So I just kept going. It followed me for about 40 miles. And quite the experience. Stan had this thing running alongside his car.
In the book, I have written a book called The Paranormal Ranger.
Microphone.
I'll be signing some cards afterward. With this, there's a story an experience that I had where this, it was during my college years, and I'd gone home and I'd gone to the movie theater one night, and this thing was running by my vehicle at highway speeds. And this is exactly what I seen that was running by my vehicle. And but anyway, we'll talk more about it out there.
We've had scratches appear on our arms for no particular reason. And believe it or not, we have a personal life. We caught up with ET, and he was, for $5, we were able to take our picture with him. I dance in the powwows, and I dance in the Blackfoot Society in Oklahoma. We call this the Iron Man competition because you're dancing in 117-degree heat, wearing long sleeves and wool, and for 3 days. Yeah. I play guitar. Can you guess what kind of music Stan likes? And everybody about fell off their chairs in Scotland when they saw this picture. We asked them, send us your soccer jerseys. So they sent us the Celtics, the Scotland Celtics. And we found out later that their mortal enemies are the Rangers. And we showed this at Sterling Paranormal Festival, and everybody just, they about fell out of their chairs laughing.
We did present in Scotland during the Scottish Paranormal Festival in 2014 or 16.
2014. We have a new member of the Paranormal Rangers, Michelle Miners. She worked with Skinwalker Ranch for a number of years. So this is the idea that, we need a gal to kind of keep us honest because she thinks better than we do.
We do have a podcast every Wednesday on KGRA radio digital broadcast.
So there's her glamour picture. And here's a picture of Stan's book, if you haven't already seen his deal, his little postcards. So we would like to thank you, all of you, for listening to our talk. And I think we got it right on time here.
Thank you for coming out to Snippy. Thank you for coming to Snippy. It's a wonderful event. Thank you all.
And we will be around to answer any questions.